that seems to be working. So I am Diego. You see my last name there on the screen right now, and apparently a small uh, like thumbnail of my ugly mug. So get used to it, at least for today. And well, first, thank you to Andrew and to GGDA for inviting me. Oh no, it's okay. I'm already quite used to my own face, Matt. So, not a problem. So, well, thanks, Andrew, for inviting me and giving me the chance to share a little bit of time with all of you today, and hopefully we're going to create a small, um, a small game. And well, if everything works well, perhaps we can turn this into a small series on how to create small games and how to do some game design. And if everyone's ready, well, let's get going. Is that okay? So, since we're going to cover basics for game development and design, I wanted to start with Construct 2. So Construct 2 is created by this company. I always been doubtful if it's Sira or Skira, so I'll let it up to you guys. They are British, and quite likely even my pronunciation of it is not going to be close to what they say it is. And you can just go to Sira.com and download it. You see it here. There are two versions, the free and the paid one. I am obviously not going to cover the paid one today. Most of the things, well, basically everything that we're going to cover today, everything you can do it with the free download. The other thing that I wanted to point is that today, they opened the public beta for Construct 3. So I'm not going to cover that since basically I just checked it this morning. Most of the basics are going to be exactly the same. And really the main difference between the two of them is that Construct 2 was made to be run on a PC. So right now, if you see the Microsoft logo here at the corner, you can see that it's only a PC application. Construct 3, on the other hand, is going to be online. So everything is web-based, is going to be running, at least most of it, on the servers of Zira. And thank you, Andrew. Well, Matt, that's exactly like the perfect link. You can see it also down here if you want to go for the beta version. And since everything's online, you can develop a new game over Windows, Linux, Mac, even tablets. That was one of the goals that they had, to also make game development go mobile. So it seems that they have been able to accomplish that. I checked it, and really most of the things are going to look exactly how we get them on Sierra, on Construct 2. The big thing is, well, they streamlined the UI, and they did a lot of things under the hood, but most of the logic is going to be exactly the same. It's just going to be simpler to do. That being said, when you download the free version of Construct 2, you install it, you are going to open it for the first time, and you're going to see an interface similar to this. The only additional thing that you're going to see is like a welcome screen here in the middle that is just going to tell you this is the first time that you run Construct 2. As you may imagine, that's not what I've been doing for the last 3 years. So I don't get any welcome anymore. But everything else is going to be the same. New empty project? Yes. So we're going to start with that. And yes, we're going to do a new empty project. So what we're going to do is, well, first I'm going to do a small demo of things that you can do, a couple of the templates, and then we're going to create the new empty project. So by the end of the session, we're going to have a small game to work with. But first I'm going to say File, New, and here in a couple of minutes, we're going to go, like Andrew mentioned, the empty project. But you also have a few templates, this long list of things, some samples, some demos, some things that we can do. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is this one that is a catapult. It's a template that already is packaged with um, construct 2. And the first thing that we're going to see on the interface is how to run your game. This is already a game that you could start modifying right away. So there are 2 ways, well, actually 3. Usually you have the run layout button here. If you have a similar layout, the template that I used was Catapult. So I'm going to close it, close project. I'm going to repeat that part. So file, new. And if you don't want to go through the entire list, yes, physics Catapult. If you don't want to go through the entire list, you can start typing here. So I knew which one I was going to look for. So this is the one that I use. Physics Catapult. Exactly. So open. And that gets us here. And now that we have the project open, like I said, we can run it pressing here, run layout, or this big one. Or if I'm not mistaken, the hotkey for this is F5. But then I'm just going to go here. So what is this going to do? It's going to open a browser window, because all the games that we're creating here are JavaScript under the hood. And you're going to be able immediately to use your mouse, that you can see it here. Or if you have a touch screen, you also can use it. So in this case, I'm going to do this. And you can immediately see what kind of game you are creating with this template. So it's a simple template, and well, it works quite well. If you don't want to use the browser that is opening here, so I'm going to say close all. We're going also to learn a couple of things, that is the properties in the project's panes that we have here. So whenever you pick something with your mouse, in this case the project, I'm clicking here. On the left side, on the properties area, you're going to see, well, all the properties of that selected object. In this particular case, since it's the project, one of the configuration settings that we have here is the preview browser. So it was saying default. You can change that, and I'm going to do it for this example. And in this case, I'm going to say Chrome, and I can run it again. And that's just going to open a different browser, and we can go back and play with it. Usually I close completely the browser window before I do some modifications. I have seen in some sessions that I have had that sometimes people leave the browser open, and if it's an old version, sometimes it caches the game, and then you make a modification and it doesn't show that change that you made. So usually I'm kind of paranoid about those things, and I just close the browser, or the browser tab or window. Now, I am going to do a couple of things with this template, and then we're going to start our own. The other thing that I'm going to do with this template is just to show you how simple it is to change things. So, for example, right now we have 2 elements. That is this little piggy that we're showing around, and these bearded ladies that we have here. So somehow this is not Angry Birds, is like pigs against bearded ladies or something. So let's suppose that I don't want this. I can delete it. They have like their own small image editor, although that's not the best thing to do it, but well, we can do it for a small sample. And you can create whatever image you want here. So let's suppose that I can do it here. Yes, as you can tell, I'm not an artist, okay? Angry chick, that's a good one. And you close it, and immediately it changes all the instances of that object that we had here, that was this sprite. And as soon as you run the layout, it's going to take those changes. So as you can imagine, it's really simple to use Construct 2 to create some proof of concept, or just to test something, or if you're just focusing on 2D games, this is a great way to do it, and it doesn't take long. And well, you can start modifying all things here. The other thing that I was going to show you is that I am going to be using some images from Kenny. So perhaps you have seen him at some point online. He created a lot of images for opengameart.org. So, and I'm going to be using some of those since they are Creative Commons 0. And now it's time to create our own game, right? It looks good. So usually what I do, because also this has happened with other people, is I close this project. So I right-click and close the project. So that way I'm not going to get confused with different projects here. It has happened before. And then I am going to go to File, select New. We're going to pick the first option, that is New Empty Project. So here, well, you're going to have exactly what you expected, an empty project, right? So two things that I want to remark here. So I'm going to change immediately the browser, Chrome. You can do it with any browser that you have available, Chrome, Explorer, Edge, Firefox, that's fine. And you're going to notice two things here. So, well, first, you see that I zoom in and out. That's something that you can do with your mouse. So just how you would zoom in a website and a web page. So it could be with the mouse wheel, or if you have a touch screen, you can also squeeze in and out, like pinch in and out, and you can zoom in or out depending on what you want. Second, you're going to see two different areas. The big white area that we have here, that's going to be our level. And then these dotted lines that are going to limit a smaller area. So this area here is what is going to appear on the screen. So this is our camera, basically. So obviously we can move things around, and let's suppose that I want to create a game similar to the original Marios that are like really long scenarios. So to do that, I could click on New Project, and you can see here that there are several things like the window size on the properties. So for example, the width of this one is 854. I could make it, I don't know, 8,000. Oh, well, this was the window. I kind of like changed the wrong one. It's in the layout, of course. I'm teaching you wrong. It's on the layout that you see the size of the scenario, basically. So let's suppose that this one, I'm going to make it 17,000. Now, as you can see, our scenario would be much, much bigger. So that's not really what, it's just to showcase what we can do. That's not really what I want to do, but we can do that. So since I have some people watching right now live, I am going to ask, would you like to create a small platformer? I can create any other kind of game, but since I'm watching right now the chat on Beam, it would be a great opportunity for anyone that is interested to say otherwise. If no one votes, I am just going to create a small platform. Okay, so small platformer it is. So the first thing that we're going to do is to add a sprite. Biggest strategy game next time, okay. And then an MMO, okay, well, I'll keep that on my, oh gosh, a MOBA too. Let's create Clash Royale or something like that, just because we can. A tower defense is actually something that I can create relatively easy. So perhaps by the end of the session, I can create a small tower defense because there's a template for that. And if you guys want, perhaps we can create some sort of poll or something like that, and we can change what kind of game we're going to create for future sessions. So today we're going to discover the basics. Okay, I'm happy to defer to tower defense. Okay, well, then I'm going to ask again, do you guys want a tower defense? Okay, well, let's do this. We're going to cover the basics with a platformer, and then we're going to at least show a little bit of the tower defense, and perhaps for future sessions, we can delve into the full tower defense. And I know that this one is really popular, and if anyone cares to know, I created a series of like 17 videos just creating a small tower defense with Construct 2. So worst case, you just look for me on YouTube. Okay, so platformer it is. So the first thing that we're going to need is Sprite. So quite likely some of you already know this, but for anyone that doesn't know, in Construct 2 and in most games, a sprite it's going to be a visual representation of an element of the game. So if you think about Mario Bros, especially, well, the old ones, what is my YouTube channel? Okay, so let me go here for a second, and I'm going to copy here in. It's already on the chat, and if someone else is not looking at the chat, I am going to go here. I think you can just go and do something like that should be the one. So, and there are a few hundred of videos there, literally. Okay. So now, that being said, so let's go back to our game, right? So let's suppose that we're going to create our first element. We need some sort of character, some sort of player character that we're going to be able to move around, right? So that's the first thing that we're going to add. To add things on Construct 2, usually in the Layout tab, this white blank that we have here, we just double click, and it's going to show you a list of things. Perhaps my list is going to look different than yours because I have many third-party plugins that I have been adding, and some of them are really useful, others are total crap, but perhaps yours is going to look different. So just to avoid problems, usually what I'm going to do is use the search box, and I am going to type a sprite or something like that. And you see that there is one, well, several here. The one that we want is this little game invader, space invader, I'm saying. And yes, there's a good chance that some people are going to be like, of course, I know what that is. And others are going to be like, I have no idea what that little thing is there. So this is one of those things that after the session, Google it. So the entire thing is a sprite, insert. Then it's going to show you this crosshair here that is going to tell you where you want to put it. And then we're going to have the little image editor that we had before. So we could create an image quickly. So the other option that you have is to load an image. So I am going to do that. And yes, of course, I already had some ready. Like I said, these are from Kenny. So I'm going to go for this one. Okay. So if you wonder where I took these things from, I'm just going to show you opengameart.org. And you have a lot of images here that you can use. Some you have to give credit, others you don't have to. And specifically the ones that I was using are from Kenny, an artist from Netherlands, and he created a lot of art for Construct 2 and for other gamers, and you just have to search that, and you see a lot of the things that he created. Most of them are just Creative Commons 0, so that means that you can use them for personal projects, for paid projects, for a lot of things, and it still works perfectly. So that being said, I'm going to go back here to my little sprite, and I can just close here, and my little alien is to be here on the screen. Right? Now, we're going to run our game for the first time. So I'm just going to say run layout. Like I mentioned before, this is going to open a browser window, and we're going to have this sprite that we just added. So this is not really a game, right? It's just basically an image. This is something that I could have done on HTML and just add an image there. So it's not really that exciting. So let's start adding things that makes it exciting. So that's when we're going to introduce the concept of a behavior. So if you click on our alien, on our sprite, for one, well, you see that here on the right side, we have all the objects that we have added. So far, we have only one, so that's what we have. The other thing is that here on the left side, almost in the middle, in the properties, you're going to have a link for behaviors. So if you click there, it's going to show an empty list. And then if you click on the plus sign in the add new, you are going to have a list of behaviors. So if you see, construct 2 follows the same patterns over and over and over again. Usually you click on something, you get a list that allows you to pick the different options that you have for that particular situation, and then you just pick the right one. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Andrew, or Matt, after the stream is done, are you going to save this video somewhere, or is just for live attendees? So it's going to be saved. Okay, perfect. So perhaps we can share that with some other people that may come late. Okay. Now, the behavior that we want to add here, sure, that works for me. The behavior that we want to look for here is this one. Well, of course, I'm not going to look. Is this one called platform. So like I mentioned before, I can use the search box and start typing platform, and this is the one that I'm going to use. You can see that I have other two. Those are not included with construct 2. These were created by fans, by people from the community, and they are quite interesting. But we're going to keep everything standard, and we're going to just go for the platform. For me, this is a name that I don't think it's totally correct, because if you see, for me, the platform is really the piece of, I don't know, where you're standing. But there you go, Matt. But in this case, when you get the platform behavior to this element, you're going to have a lot of things that are going to be added to this little alien here. So let's try it. So run layout. So technical difficulties on my computer. Okay, there you go. So I'm going to repeat the process. So this is the perfect opportunity for anyone that just joined. So I'm going to create file, new empty project, double click. I am going to look for Sprite. I'm going to locate it here. Then I'm going to open a file, and I'm going to pick one image that I think it looks cool. Then I am going to add a behavior to this little alien, and that's going to be the platform. And the other thing that I also did was to change the browser for Chrome and run the layout. And hopefully this time it's going to work. And you see it. So right now, basically what we have just added to this little alien is gravity. So it's a little annoying, because then the only thing that it's doing is to just fall. So what do we add to stop the little alien from falling? Then we are going to add some sort of platform, some sort of ground, so where he stands. So I'm going to double click, add another sprite. So look for a sprite, and I'm going to add it here. Since this is something that it could be just like a piece of land, a piece of, well, whatever, I am just going to pick a color. So pick whichever color you think it's cool, and make a square with that color. I don't think that's a really cool color, but well, whatever. And you can move it around here. The other thing is that this gigantic block is not really what I want. So we're going to learn something else there too, is that with the corners, you can see when I have something selected, I can change the shape and the size manually. I also could do it here on the properties. You see that I can change the position and I can change the size. But we have this other sprite. If we don't say anything else, this sprite is not going to do much. But if we add a behavior, again, in the middle of the properties, we have an empty list, then add new, and this one is quite simple because it's right here, solid. So Now, this alien has the platform behavior, and this piece of block here has the solid behavior. So if I run this, and everything goes as expected, now there is gravity for my little alien, but is detecting the solid underneath, right? And also, if you use your keyboard, you're going to be left, right, and with the up arrow, you're going to be able to jump. Then you're going to fall if you need to. Still, we found like the first thing that I would like to change. Somehow the legs are missing. So what happened there? What happened is that when we added this little alien here, Construct 2 tried to guess the shape of the alien to be able to detect things like collision. So the right shape should work something like this, but that's not what happened. So how do we change that? Then we select our alien, we double click, and on the left side of this toolbar, we're going to have this option that says Set Collision Polygon. If I click on that, you should see something like this. And you can tell that Construct 2 tried its best to have something that look like the alien. The problem is that apparently the legs do not matter for some reason. I don't know if it's not detecting the pixels down here or whatever it is, but we can change it manually. And to do that, we just drag these little pieces here. If we do that and hopefully we drag them like all the way below, it's going to work. This is quite useful in case that you have a really weird shape, and is recommended that the shape that the collision polygon that you have here does not have too many points. And something that I have done personally is to try to do like circular things, and that's usually a pain. But things like this that have relatively simple shapes should work. After that, we just can close and try again our little, and now it looks a little bit better. Now, the next thing that I would like to do is that we have a really limited world in this case. We have only one platform here, and as soon as I fall off from the platform, that's pretty much it. There's nothing that I can do. So the next thing that we can do is to create more platforms. And we could repeat the process of double click, look for a sprite, and add that. But then for every platform that we add, we are going to also have to add this solid behavior. That takes a lot of time. That's quite annoying. So what we could do is, why don't we copy this existing object? So I think you can do Control-C, Control-B. Or the other option is to just press Control and then just drag something. The thing is that originally these new versions, these new instances of the object have the same size as the original one, but then I can change it and I can move them around, and I can even rotate it a little bit if I want to. And also they are going to have the solid behavior. So if we run it right now, going to be able to move around. So that makes it a little bit more interesting. Now, we are still going to have a limitation, and is that as soon as I jump off the screen, I lose my alien. I lose my character. So what do we do here? So far, basically, we have been solving all problems just with a behavior. So we're not going to change that so far. So we're going to add another behavior with the alien, for the alien. So we just select the alien, we go again to the behaviors, and you can see that right now there's something underneath. And this one is the platform. That's the behavior that we added at the beginning. Here, we're going to have the link for adding new behaviors. At some point, perhaps we can modify some of these things, some of the attributes of the platform behavior, but for the moment, we're going to leave them like that. We're just going to click on behaviors. We see that our list is not empty anymore, and we can add a new behavior. And this one that we're going to look for is going to be called scroll to. So we click that one and add it, or just double click, and we should have it here. And what this is going to be doing is basically to move the camera of our game following this little alien that we have here. So let's test it. You see that even if I fall, it's going to try to follow me. Of course, we still have a limitation, and is that we said at the beginning that our entire level is shown here. So when we were falling a few seconds ago here, the camera is going to follow me all the time while I'm inside of the world. But at the moment that I fall off the world of our level, then we lost our alien. But well, that's something that perhaps we actually want. If you want, one trick that you could do is to basically copy one of the solid here and put it at the bottom, and then you could repeat the same process at the top and the sides, and then you're going to have a small box that is really going to limit the alien from getting out of your level. Depending on what you're doing, that may be something that you want, and you can see that right now I don't see the platform here, but it's there. So that's something that it's going to depend on what kind of game you want to create. Now, I am just going to add perhaps a couple of enemies, and then we're going to go into the event sheet here. And yes, I know how sometimes that word sounds for me, so I'm just going to say the tab that has events, and we're going to add a couple of events that add a little bit of logic to our game. So first thing that I'm going to do is to add another sprite. It's going to be our enemy. If you're following and doing the same things at home, what I would recommend is just to create a small square here and perhaps give it like a red color or something like that. And that's going to be your enemy. So don't really spend too much time there, because you can go later and modify the image that you're using. But since supposedly I have a couple of images ready, I'm going to try to look for some sort of platform. Symmetric. Oh. Let's see if we have some sort of enemies here. PNG. Of course not. Why should I have enemies there when I need them? This one. Man, blue. What is this? Perhaps go up, and I should have Kenny's top-down shooter. Of course, I cannot find one that is good. Well, you can see that I have some from Earthbound, so here. So if I was using a blue one, get for just that's going to be the enemy. Though it looks a bit pinkish, but well, that can be good. So this could be my enemy over here. Yeah, that works. So the first, add several enemies around the scenario, and we can make the enemies go in different ways, but since we are trying just to cover like the to try to is a combination of two behaviors. So one is going to be called line of sight, and the other one is going to be called bullet. So I'm going to pick my enemy, and I'm going to go to the behaviors, line of sight, So you saw it there. And the next one is going to be called bullet. So line of sight is going to be used for what you would expect. I am going to make the enemies basically static until they're able to see the player. And then the bullet is one of the simplest ways that you can make things move in Construct 2. Like a bullet, you're just going to have an object that is going to move in a straight line, and you can make it stop, you can make it accelerate, or you could change the direction. Usually, changing the direction could have a little bit of problems, but because it moves much faster than what you would expect. But this is what we're going to have. Now, originally, I'm going to have my enemies to have the bullet speed at 0. So they're not going to move. And we are going to have, well, this sounds like a really big thing here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Since we have something like this, something like that, perhaps. I don't know if the range for the line of sight is too big, but we're going to try with that. So at this point, we're going to change tabs for the first time. We're going to go from the layout that you can imagine that is at your level, and we're going to change to the vents. So here, again, you're going to have kind of like an empty space, and you're going to have the little link here that says add event. So an event works like an if then else. If something happens, if a condition that you're adding happens at any given time, then the action or actions that you add are going to be executed. So in this particular case for our game, the condition, the question that we're going to be asking all the time is like, does my enemy see the player? Do I have it on my line of sight? And since I want to actually talk in terms of enemies and characters and players, so I'm going to rename this one, and it's going to be called enemy. And the other one is going to be the player, right? So I'm going to go back to the events, and I'm going to add an event. Usually, the events are going to ask questions about the existing objects. But you see that also there is one that is called system. So system is going to represent like the things, the system that you're running your game in. So it could be your browser, it could be, well, the browser in your phone, it could be your tablet. So you can ask a lot of things there, like the passage of time and things like that. But in this case, we really just need to have my enemy. So I'm going to ask my enemy. Again, we have a list of things that we can ask about the enemy, and including things about the behaviors that we added, like the bullet. But in this case, I'm looking for the line of sight. So in this case, I can make two questions related to that. Has line of sight to object, or has line of sight to position? So since we want to ask about the player, we're going to pick this one. Now, it tells you, you are telling me that I'm asking about line of sight for an object. Tell me which object. So I click here, and I can pick the player. And I can say done. And you see that now we have an event with no actions, and it's asking the question if the enemy has line of sight to the player. One of the cool things that you have with Construct 2 is that even if everything underneath is JavaScript, it tries to show you in the editor things almost in natural language. Obviously, there are some exceptions to that, but usually they try to be really clear about the things. And also you see that small icons or like thumbnails that you have that represent the enemy and the player. And if you change them here, they're also going to be changed here. So you always have a good idea just looking at the event, what's going on. Now, what do I do if my enemy has line of sight with a player? I'm going to add two actions. The first one is I am going to change the angle of my enemy to point towards my player. And then I am going to use the bullet behavior that we added to my enemy to move. So basically, my enemy is going to turn into some sort of rocket that is going to try to kill my player. So let's add the actions, and we add them one by one. Add action. And just like with the event, with the question, I can pick the objects or object that is going to be affected, in this case, enemy, and then we're going to have a list of things that we can do. So I am going to say set angle toward position. Now, which position do I have to point to? Well, the position of the player. And this is one of the few times that I actually have to type something. So in this case, I'm going to say player dot x. This is where math, paying attention in math at school kind of like pays off. Player dot y. And done. Algebra for the win? Yes. At some point, I'm going to make a what is it? Another Adventure Time kind of thing, and then I can say mathematical at the same time. So this is the first thing that we do. So for example, if at some point we have this little alien here, it's going to change its direction to point towards the player if it had it in its line of sight. Now, the next action that I have to do is just to change the speed of the bullet. Why? Because I originally changed it to 0. So now I'm going to say enemy bullet, and I can say here set speed. And I'm just going to put it to, I don't know, 300. Actually, 400 is quite fast. So 300 should be okay. So all in all, we have just one event that is asking one question, line of sight, and then it has 2 actions. We could add as many actions as we want here. And we also could make more complex questions in the events. But right now, let's try it with that. So for once, I'm going to show something else. You see that these enemies that we have underneath, perhaps they could have line of sight to my player, but there's something in between. And if you look at the properties of line of sight, it says like, what are my obstacles? And it says solid. And if you remember, we added the solid behavior to these blocks. So right now, even if I move it over here, this little alien is not going to be able to see my player. So let's try that. You see, it's right here, but it's not able to see it. Now, at that point, those are going to be able to see me. And if you can tell, it's a little aggressive. And since they are always changing direction, you can tell that at the moment that they touch the player, they are trying to move and at the same time change direction. And well, I think in the stream it's not as visible as it is on my screen. But if you're doing it at home, you're going to see like almost like if the enemies are vibrating, and then they just keep following me around like crazy. While I have line of sight, I think the only option that I have, oh well, it was not even like fast enough to get away from them. But wow, that's the first thing. Wonder why I did that? Okay, basically it's because this event is going to keep running all the time. Okay, upside down constantly. They seem to be flipping. Okay, well in my computer it kind of look almost like if they were going up and down. So basically this event is constantly running. So even if they were able to catch with the player, they are still going to try to keep looking for line of sight and changing the direction, setting the new angle and keeping the same speed. So one thing that we could do, and that's something that would be a next event to add, would be to say like whenever the enemy touches the player, perhaps I'm just going to stop the player, the enemy. I don't need it to keep following. So I'm going to add an event. I'm going to pick the enemy. And in this case, I'm not going to look for it. I know which one it is. It's collision. So the one that we're going to pick is on collision with another object. And if you can guess from what we did before, that object is going to be the player. Now, I am lazy that way, that even if I can do all the clicks needed for creating an action here, if I already have the action, I just copy paste. And that's one of the other cool things that we have in this editor. I can pick this action, that is to change the speed of the enemy. I can go to the corresponding new event, and I can double click just to change 300 for 0. So then that still may not work, but well, we're going to try it. It may stop it for a second and then, yeah, it immediately gets it. Okay. Then instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is just to destroy the enemy. Add action, enemy, destroy. So at this moment, we're not going to have like that flipping behavior. So obviously, well, it's kind of cool because I can see now that the enemies are being destroyed, but that's not how usually most games work. How usually they work is that you have some sort of lives, you show that to the player, and we are decreasing the lives, right? So we're going to work in our first game over. And that, I think it's going to be most of the things that we're going to do with this small game, because I would really like to change you, to show you the tower defense game that we have right now, also with the templates. So let's add lives and let's decrease the lives whenever we have these events here. So we are going to go for the events. Usually what I do it, you can do it out here, like at the bottom or kind of like outside of the events. And you have this, you right click on that, you right click, it's not a regular click, it's a right click. And you have the option to add a global variable, right? So that variable is going to ask you the name, that in this case I'm going to say lives. And that's not how I always kind of like mix it up. No, it's the other way, right? And tell me when I'm, yeah, correctly. Thank you, Andrew. From time to time when I'm explaining something, I like grammar and other things in English kind of like go out of the window. So it is going to ask you also lifers. Okay. It's also going to ask you the type. So you have two options, number or text. In this case, we just want to have the number. And the initial value. So of course, this is going to depend on your game. And I am just going to go for something simple, that is 3. If you want to give the character 20 lives, 100 lives, that's up to you. It's just that we kind of like go for kind of like a standard thing. So now you should see that at the top, there is this little green area that shows you a global variable. Now, what I also can do here is that we already have an event that is detecting the collision between the enemy and the player. So this is the perfect area to add the decrease the number of lives. So I'm going to add another action here at the bottom, you can see. And this case, you can tell that there's nothing that is called lives. The object that we had here does not appear on my list. And that's because the system is the one that takes care of variables. So we have to pick system. And also there's a little section that talks about global and local variables. So, and you can see the icon basically corresponds to this one. And you can add to it, you can set it, or you can subtract. So that's what we're going to do, subtract. If we had more than one variable, you are going to see the entire list here, but right now we have only one, and you are going to decide how many lives we're going to decrease. So in this case, we're just going to do for 1. Now, I am not going to run this. I'm not going to run the game. Why? Because these lives, the variable, they are not visible for the player. There is nothing that is telling me how many lives I have. So we could decrease them here, and the player, because he's only seeing these things, these elements that we have added on the layout, the player is not going to see anything that is going to tell me the number of lives. So we're going to add something for that. And of course, we're going to find a problem, and I'm going to show you how to solve it. So I'm going to double click, and I am going to look for text. There are several things. The ones that quite likely you have are text box and text. If you have done something with HTML, quite likely you can tell the difference between the two. This one is to get input whenever you want the player to type something into that. But the one that we really want is this one, text. So be careful about that. So not text box, we just want text. And I am going to put it here. Now, the text, we can change. I am going to show you up here. It'll include some sort of text that you can hear correctly. You see, I do learn. 3. And now, if we run this, is not going to show us. I have to jump. Why? And also, I just decreased one of the lives here, or well, I can see it. You see? Supposedly, the number of lives should go down. So, well, for once in my game, I'm going to move it a little bit closer to this. And second, we're decreasing the variable, but we are not updating this text that we have here. So I know that the lives are going to change every single time that we subtract from the variable lives. So I could say like, hey, why don't we update the text? So I'm going to add another action. This time we have the text. And I could just go at the bottom and say set text. So I am sorry to tell you, but this is one of the few times that we do have to type something. And you see that in this case, construct 2 is already adding like some quotes. So what's the thing with the quotes? This is basically going to be a string. So whatever we put inside of that, inside of those quotes, is going to be exact. Again, everything with lives. Everything that we put inside of the quotes is going to appear exactly how it is there. But we need somehow to get the value from the variable lives. So we need to concatenate. And in construct 2, that's done with the ampersand. And we can use lives. So this one that is here is just a message. This one is just is it duck and cover who are being rated? Okay. This is just the message that I want the player to see. And this one is the value that comes from the variables, from the variable that in this case is called lives. So I just say done. And since I'm updating every time, hopefully, you see lives 3, 2, 1, 0. And of course, we're also going to have a -1. Well, that one is going to get me a -2. So right now, well, I want to solve two things. One is why the lives, this little text, is in this corner and is not following me. And it's because we have not done anything to turn this into some sort of UI. We don't have this as a user interface. So I'm going to talk about layers for a second, and then we are going to basically add the game over. So If we go to the right side, you're going to see that so far we have been talking only about the projects. And if you scroll down, you're going to see also the objects that we have added, that in this case are the enemy, player, sprite, text, that are the same things that we have here. But we have never changed to this little tab that it says layer. So on Construct 2, on the free version, you can add up to 4 layers. In the paid versions, you can add as many layers as you want. And if you have done anything with games, you can imagine that this is something that is quite useful, because we're going to be able to put this one in a different layer, and we're going to be able to control it as a user interface. If you haven't done anything with games before, imagine the layers almost as pages of a book. And the one that is going to be on top is going to cover whatever is underneath, right? So we have by default one layer that is layer 0. I'm going to click on this add layer at the top, and it just added another one, right? Just to make things a little bit clear, I am going to rename it, and I am going to call this one UI, right? Now my text, I don't want it to be like just in a static place. I want it always to be in a certain area of the screen. And to do that, I am going to select the text, go to the properties, and you see that here in common, it's going to tell me the layer that this element is in. And now, since we renamed the layer to UI, I can pick that one. Now, since we haven't done anything else, this is not going to do much. The other thing that we have to do is also to change the layer. And if we check the properties of this layer, the UI, you're going to see something that is called the parallax. So the parallax is going to allow us to have some static elements or to move at a different rate. So, well, that's the parallax. To create a user interface, we can just say the parallax of this is 0, 0. So it always is going to be in the same position in the screen. So now if we run this, even if my is moving around, my text for lives is always going to appear there. Obviously, that's not the best possible location, so I'm just going to put it on the right top corner. See that now my lives decrease and it works perfectly. Finally, we can or we should create some sort of game over. We're even getting to the point that I have negative lives, -2. That's not usually how games work. So what I'm going to do is to add another text. So I'm going to double click. I'm going to add it almost in the middle. And I am going to make a gigantic game. Oh yeah, I guess that's kind of like a weird thing. So it doesn't look so big. So how do I make it bigger? It's not just doing this. You can change the font and the size and the color. So I am going to change it to make it like red, and I'm going to change the size to make it like 72. So to make it incredibly clear that it's a game over. Now, this thing, if we make things correctly, it's added already to the top, to the latest active layer, but I could change it. So it just turns out that this works perfectly for us, that is on the UI. But if I run it right away, it immediately says game over. That's how, again, usually games work. So I can make it invisible at the beginning. Or I can go to the properties all the way to the bottom, and there is something that says initial visibility. Of course, originally is visible. I'm going to change it to invisible. And there's a comment. Speaking of game over. Okay. Well, thank you for for being the live stream. Quite likely, well, I'm going to dedicate like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes more. I don't think it's going to be more than that. We're almost done with this part, what I wanted to cover today. And then I'm just going to show you the tower defense, and then we can call it a night. Okay, so well, what I did was to change the game over initial visibility to invisible. Now if I run it, it's going to be there. It's just that we cannot see it. But we can go to the events and add a new event and ask with system, compare variable. We have only one, that is lives. And I am going to say if lives are less or equal than 0. Why less or equal than 0? Why not 0? And this is, again, something that I have learned by experience, and is because it could be sometimes things happen so fast that it could happen that 2 enemies hit the player almost at the same time, and suddenly the lives are not 0, are -1. So if you are not going to be paranoid and say, like, also, let's do the same thing for negative, you could get into a situation that your game never goes to game over. So yes, this is just me being paranoid, but the worst part is that I've seen it with my own eyes. So that's why I'm adding less or equal than 0. So the first thing that I'm going to say, yes, you have to, that's why play testing is great. So now we have the question. So now what I have to do is to change this one that it is called so far text2. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to say game. I'm going to make the game over visible. So game over, visible, set visible to visible. The other thing that I'm going to add here, even before we test it, is I am going to pause the game. So I'm going to add another action. It's going to be with system. And this one is going to be for the set time scale. So that's why I was filtering with time, set time scale. And this thing, fortunately, gives you a little bit of a tip of what you can do here. And it tells you the normal speed is 1, half speed is 0.5, double 2, and 0 is pause. So that's the one that we want. So we have these 2 actions. Oh, oops. Game over, set visible, system, set time scale to 0. So let's run it and let's see. So lives are 3, 1, 2, boop, game over. And it stopped at 0. So that means that we did it right. So this is basically what you can do, and well, obviously it took me much longer because I'm trying to explain and go through all the steps. But really, when you get used to it, if you can tell, this is the basics for like a small game, and it has only 3 events and 1 additional like variable here. And this is something that you can do perhaps in 5 minutes. So, so I think it's pretty good for what we have. Now, I am going to ask one time, would you like to stop it at here and check a little bit? Yeah, a game in an hour. And we can check for a second the template with the tower defense. Okay. So I am going to save this. So if in the next live stream anyone wants to continue with this one, we can do that. And if not, well, we can just create a new game. So this is also quite cool. You have 2 options. Well, you can, well, 3 actually. So save as a project, and save as a single file. So save as a project is going to create a folder that includes several files, including all the individual graphics and all that, and you can kind of like tinker with those and all that. If you just want to have everything ready to send by email and to share with someone else, usually what I do is just say save as single file. This is going to create a zip file that includes everything. So I am just going to, well, let's add it here. And let's call it GGDA live stream. And it's going to be a .capx, caps. And let's see if I had it. I think some diversity. Here it is. So just to show you how it works, I'm going to rename it, and I can show you really quick how that works. So I think it's a zip file. Yes, I want to do this. That's why I did it with a copy, and I am going to extract it to another folder. And if you don't save it as a single file, you can just check, and it's going to do something like this. It's going to create a project. You can tell that there's an XML that is going to be a description of your entire world, the layouts that we created, files, animations. So it's going to add the different sprites that you have here. Well, this one is kind of like lame to save. That one was the platform, but well, it's needed for the game. And the player is going to be here. You see? If we added some sort of animations, that could be a great topic for the next game, next session. It is going to save basically all the images that you're going to need, all the frames that you're going to need to create animations. And of course, you can see that you can create animations that have many frames. So that's something interesting to check. But basically, your entire game is going to be in these folders created here, and then you can reopen it later. So if you have it like this, you just double click on this construct project. Or if you have it like this, that is the CAPX, then you just double click and construct 2 is going to open it for you. Okay, since we already saved this, I am going to close this project. And we're going to create a new one. Okay, so we can say File, New. And the template that I want to show you, because these are British people, they don't call it tower defense. It's called turret defense. So that's the trick. Turret defense, the first one. And you see that there are several here, but I'm just going to go for the regular template. Now, this is still a TD, of course. At least they are consistent with that. So you can tell that this game is a little bit longer. It has 16 events. Ours had like 3 or 4. The cool thing is that they do have like good descriptions about what is going on. And I'm just going to show you and then explain how it goes. So run layout. This template, I think it's perhaps one of the most useful ones, because it has a lot of things that you would really like to have in your game. Okay, did it open? Oh, okay. Well, apparently it opened and I didn't even notice, so I'm going to restart. So first thing that you have here, 2 behaviors, one for the towers and one for the enemies. The towers do have, and I'm going to show you here, they have a turret behavior that is going to allow you to detect enemies and change things like the rate of fire, the range that they can detect the enemies, and how fast they are able to rotate. Now, the enemies that are moving here have another cool behavior, that is the pathfinding behavior. So you have it here. So if we want to test that, just look at the little maze that we have here, and they are able to find that the path, also like the walls, have the solid behavior, just how we did in our platformer. So that's not going to change. It's still a solid. And the enemy is going to detect that if I need to go to the red square at the end of the maze that we have here, I have to follow this path over here. So what happens if I just make a modification like this? Quite likely, or that's what we should expect, instead of like going all the way up here, the short shortest path, the most efficient one, would be just to go here. So let's test that. And you see that immediately it detects that that's the right path to go. So just a simple modification and you immediately have a completely different game. So what kind of things can we do? What if I just decide like, hey, let's get it back. This is going to be my first level, this layout. And I could go here, duplicate it, and it's going to be the layout too, and I can open it. And guess what? It has exactly the same elements that we had in the other one. And what if I start modifying things like crazy? Well, actually, I'm going to change that one there. Immediately, this new layout is going to be a second level. So you basically could make things to work for one level, make certain that it works perfectly, and then just make a copy, and you have another level when you modify it. So it's really simple to do. The other things that perhaps I am going to explain the next time that we go there are the things that you do at the beginning. So for example, for the pathfinding behavior, you have to tell the enemies to find a path. So in this case, it says go to enemy target XY. And that's this one. Rinse and repeat, the School of Game Design Theory. Of course, that's not just that. It's like whoever created programming decided that programmers were really lazy, and we were not going to type or repeat anything that you can if you just can copy paste. So doing things with copying full levels, it's the best thing to do. So well, when the game starts, basically the enemy is going to decide that it needs to find a path between the origin, that is this green square here, and the goal, that is this one here. And that's something that it takes a little bit, used by EA and Ubisoft. Okay. Okay. Interesting comments. I'm not going to say them out loud. So the cool thing is that, well, one little bit of a problem is that usually finding a path is something that is quite like CPU intensive. So usually you shouldn't be doing it like constantly. So how it's set up is like find a path and then start moving when you find a path. So we can go into details for that. So for example, here it says find a path, and then when it finds the path on a path found, you can just say move along. And something also can, like, it works for, well, all this is the enemy control. So you can see that you can group things on construct too. Now for the turret or the tower, you say whenever automatically the turret, the tower is going to detect a new enemy. So you don't have to do anything. And since you're going to give the turret a rate of fire, it is also going to calculate it's on my line of sight. This many seconds, 0.3, have passed, so it's time for me to shoot. So then you can say, like, what do you do when you shoot? In this particular case, we already have seen the bullet behavior. It's literally going to create a bullet that is here, and that one has the bullet behavior that is just going to move in a straight line. And then you can decide what to do when the enemy is touched by a collision with the enemy. So something similar to what we did before in the previous game. Is just that the collision was between the enemy and the player. In this case, it's going to be between the bullet and the enemy, but the logic is quite similar. So at some point, I am going to, well, show you all the specifics, and perhaps we can recreate a little bit this series around a tower defense game if you guys want. So far, what do you guys? Yeah, it would be okay. Well, that would be quite interesting. Usually, people really like tower defense games. That's why I kind of like try to spend some time doing it. And what do you guys think? Did you find useful this session? April 25th. Okay. That's good. Perfect. So then perhaps next time we can even like start directly on tower defense right away, and we can start small and build it from zero. So by the time that we're done, we are going to have a small tower defense game, and hopefully you like it. Apart from that, questions, comments? Sure. And Andrew, if you want, I also have a copy of what I did. I can send you the file, so you can put it also in the description of the. I can send you a link so people can download it of everything that I did today. The other two things, the tower defense, I'm not going to send you because, well, that's a template here. We didn't do much with that. But then, like the first game, you can download it, so you could try to follow the video and recreate it, or just download and keep building on top of that. That sounds good? Perfect. Well, I think that's pretty much from everything from me. Okay, that's perfect. Yes, then I will send you those links as a follow-up. So then one link for the game itself, and then for the art, and then people can download it beforehand, so we can just jump in creating the game. Thank you very much, guys.